Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the beautiful Claire Cartwright. Claire, how you doing today?
Hello, very, very good. Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
so much for having me on.
I am so excited about this. You guys may recognize Claire from a movie I've been told 1,000 times I have to watch. I finally watched it. It is the very fun Benny Loves You. But we also have Claire's parts in the shorts, Roof of Warrior, The Date, Blind Fate. But obviously everybody's been telling me you got to watch Benny Loves You. You got to watch Benny Loves You. And I've been having this chance to talk with Claire before the episode actually aired about Benny Loves You and all the hard work that went into this film. I love this film. I think that it's a lot of fun. I think that the practical effects are great. The CGI is so good. All things we talked about. What was it like for you, Claire, on the set of Benny Loves You, being a part of this passion project?
It was really fun. There was something about there being no budget and no expectations for it that was really liberating, because we were all just like there to be together, to do it, to like stay up all night, to hold a boom if you had to like, do whatever. We were all hands on deck, and actually there's something beautiful about that, about creating like that, where a lot of the kind of airs and graces are taken away. As an actor, sometimes, particularly with film and television, there can be you sometimes are a bit separate from the goings on of the creating of it, of the technical side of the whatever. Whereas this was just so all in. And so it was a beautiful thing to do. It was absolutely amazing.
And if you guys haven't seen Benny Loves You yet, I strongly recommend it. This is a very fun movie, and there's never a point in this movie to me where it felt over the top. They knew what they were trying to do. They accomplished what they were trying to do, and I had fun all the way through the movie. But here in the future, like I said, you all have also been part of the shorts, Roof of Warrior, The Date, Blind Fate. Do you have anything coming? I know with NDAs and stuff, it's kind of crazy, but is there anything you have coming up in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Well, I have to say that things are on hold for a little bit, because I'm about to, well, not about to, but I'm having a baby in April. And so that tends to be a bit tricky in terms of working for an actress, particularly at the moment because of COVID. So pregnant women on film sets are a bit of a bummer for everybody, because everyone's like, so actually not so much. I've got a short film called Hope coming out. I think at the end of this year. It's just on the festival circuit, but that is a very different ball game. That is not funny at all. But yeah, apart from that, no, I'm just gonna be cooking a baby for
Congratulations! I'm so happy for you. That's
Thank you
so
so
amazing.
much.
Is this your first child?
This is my second. I've got one downstairs. You can probably hear her. Actually, she's downstairs shouting.
Well, congratulations. It's being a parent is my favorite thing in the whole world. So I'm so happy that you're bringing another life into this world. And
it's a ride. Yeah, it's amazing. I with my first one, who was downstairs during COVID, I did like a German TV show called Rosman Pilcher, and I had to take her down to Cornwall with me. Have you seen The Witches?
Like the
movie, the original, like Angelica Houston, The Witches.
Oh yeah.
So you know that hotel?
Yeah.
So that's where they put me up.
That's hilarious. Where the boys stuck in and they turned them into mice. Like
right. That hotel, it's in Cornwall, and I was filming this TV show, and I was still like breastfeeding my daughter. And so my partner had to come with me, and they had to bring my daughter as well. They were like, "Oh, you're staying in this hotel?" And I was like, this is the creepiest hotel in the world.
That's so awesome, though. Like, that's like hearing stories like that, like to be able to hear these memories that you have. That, obviously as a little boy, The Witches was so scary to me. The scene in the hall where they start turning the kids and they all start turning and pulling the head back. Like, Oh, for sure, for sure. And then you go and stay
Unbelievable.
there. That's remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And like, it's kind of got a weird vibe. It's got a weird vibe. And like, the staff who were working there were like, "Oh yeah, it's haunted." I was like, "What? What?" I was like, "Oh, for sure, it's haunted. Yeah, 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 yeah. This person's seen this. This person's seen this." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." It's like this super kind of old Victorian. I mean, it's kind of like it is in the movie. But it was amazing. So it was like really cool and also really freaky to stay there.
I love how they were just so, yeah, it's haunted. You'll be fine. Go ahead and go
Yeah,
to
yeah,
bed.
yeah, yeah. It's cool that it's haunted. Yeah, come in. Hopefully we'll see a ghost.
That's so much fun. And I love the fact that you have that memory that you're going to be able to share with your kids, when they
Yeah,
watch that movie eventually, hey, guess what? We stayed there and you stayed
yeah,
there. You weren't
yeah,
quite ready yet, but you were there. Those
yeah,
are really cool memories that you're going to
yeah.
be able to share with your kids forever.
And that's what's brilliant. But like, I don't know. Uh, there's something about like locations in movies that you can
Mhm.
identify with. That's really, people always love watching movies that are like set in their city or in their like hometown or whatever it is. There's something really cool about interacting with a space that's been a part of your like cultural life in a movie or a TV show or whatever it is. I came to America um, for a few years ago. I was in LA for a bit, and because in the UK we grow up with your TV shows, with all of your movies, with your culture, with your accents, with your music. Actually, being in America itself is kind of like a celebrity because it's super familiar, but you've never met it. So the
Right.
landscape, the buildings, the cars, the way things are, the food, you're like, oh, it's really interesting
That's
being in
all.
a
I've
place.
never thought of it like that. Like
Yeah,
that's something I've never thought of like that. And that's so cool, like that's how we feel. Like, I would love to be able to cross the pond someday and see some of these
right.
things that, I've adored as a kid, Big Ben, go over
Yeah.
there, see the all of it, the Leaning
And like
Tower, like
get on a red bus or like post a letter into a red post box that's so like quintessentially British. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, go on the double-decker bus. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would love to do that stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey man, we love doing that. Going to the top deck. That's great.
you're right.
We love it.
I mean, and Claire, the thing that we talked about with Benny Loves You is we talked about how fun it is. But we got to remember it is a horror movie at heart, a horror comedy, but it is a horror movie. And horror is something that to me is super important. I'm going to give a little disclaimer here. Claire, not as much of a horror lover as we are, but she is essential to the genre now because of how much we all love Benny Loves You. So when something like that happens, I do got to at least have to find out where it started. Now, the reason that I think Claire may not be into horror as much as we all are is because her first horror movie is fucking terrifying and it probably blew her mind a little bit. So I want to take it back to the past for a minute here, Claire, and talk about your first horror movie. And your first horror movie was
My first horror movie was It by Stephen King. But like it's all very well it being it, but I was young.
starting off with this. Maybe a very good reason why it scared you away from the genre for a while. You were about to say you were very young. Do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I sort of knew you were gonna ask me that, and I mean, maybe like 10. Do you know what? Like something around that. Just so far too young. And it was. I think I told you when we first started chatting, but I had like a turbo crush on my friend's older brother.
Yes.
Maybe maybe I was 12. I don't know. Can you have a turbo crush when you're 10? Yeah, you can. I
Sure
don't
you
know.
can.
I was
Especially if
like,
it's a friend's brother or sister. I think that makes it even more of a
yeah,
crush because you're around him all the
yeah.
time.
And I just thought he was so cool and so gorgeous. And he one day, and also because he was my friend's older brother, they didn't want to hang out with us ever. Of course they didn't, because we were like, young and and lame. And then one day he and his friend were like, "Do you want to watch a movie with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Any time we can spend with you is like heaven on earth." And he was like, "It's a horror movie. It'll be scary." And I, of course, was all bravado. I was like, "I've seen loads of horror movies. That is fine." And then I sat through it, and I couldn't really go to the bathroom by myself. I still struggle, honestly. Like, it's stayed with me.
Well, and I think a big thing about that is what we got to remember is watching it now in comparison to watching it as a child is two completely different things. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about the clown and the horror elements, but you're watching, from my point of view as a young boy, I'm watching some of these younger men that are my age, looking at them as peers. You have Beverly, and you're talking about, going into the bathroom, and Beverly is looking into that sink, and then the red balloon starts coming up through the sink, and it blows, and the blood goes all over her. As a young lady, I'm sure that you were gravitating more towards the Beverly in those scenes. So I think that's why maybe a scene in the bathroom may have affected you a little more. Whereas with younger boys, like I see the scene where Ben is out at I can't think what they called it, but he's out there where the pond and everything is, and he sees his dad in his military outfit, and then he slowly morphs into the clown, the Barons. That's what I wanted to say. He's out at the Barons, and he's slowly morphing into that clown. You're watching Ben, whose father passed away at war, seeing his dad turn into this clown. So that's what I think that we often forget about when we watch movies as children as comparison to watching them as adults. Now we relate more to the parents and what they're going through, whereas children, we really didn't know that feeling of parental love and parental protection. So we were just looking at the kids and what the kids were going through. So I can completely understand why that affected you so much as a young lady.
Yeah, I think that's how we experience everything, isn't it? Like we excuse me, we of course recognize ourselves in the people that we're watching, and if you are watching a horror movie that takes place in the lives of people who look like you, who kind of are a similar age, or you can really reflect with and like connect to, then you're right. Somehow, like, I guess the thing that really terrifies me about horror movies is that even though it's like, it's just a movie, that's okay, but I think it's the idea that it could happen to me, or like, or whatever it might be, and that is just terrifying. Obviously, there's supernatural stuff that they can't, but yeah, it just sort of burrows into my soul, and just too much.
People look at it and they're like, "Oh, it's a killer clown monster. That's not real." This was based off John Wayne Gacy, who was a killer clown monster. Like, yeah, maybe he didn't turn into a big old spider or anything, but he was a monster, and that's what I love about the juxtaposition of what it is. It's this beautiful clown that is this monster murderer underneath. And we get that right at the opening. You have a little girl riding her tricycle that was probably even more closer to your age than Beverly was. And then she sees the clown and he's smiling at her. And then the clothes go through the line and now he looks angry and he just, he kills her off screen. And, the juxtaposition, now obviously clowns is kind of a phobia for people all the time because of things like this. But clowns are supposed to be beautiful and fun and laughy, but you have that, and then you have this monster underneath that's doing these disgusting, vile things like John Wayne Gacy. It's only natural this gets turned into a supernatural horror movie. And I don't think about these things often like that, but it's amazing how these things can really affect us in our personal life because it makes us think of what could happen to us for real.
Absolutely. And I think often in horror movies, people use like, I think comedy and tragedy, or comedy and horror are so closely linked. There's a knife edge between them, isn't there? And I think comic characters, comic figures throughout time, throughout the history of humankind, like right back to ancient Greek theatre, all the way through Shakespeare, you get these comic characters that are quite dark.
Mhm.
You know, clown figures that are, if you just scrape back the surface, they're really, there's some like darkness under there. And I think that's very, that is honest actually
Yeah.
to a lot of how human beings work. You
Mhm.
know, the lighter, sort of more hilarious you are, perhaps the greater the darkness. You know, who knows, bit philosophical, but it's certainly as a juxtaposition, as an image, the clown character next to darkness has always been a thing, and it is really effective. It's really effective.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and more so with this movie, you also have, it's also a coming of age movie with the kids. Like, you have the scene where Bill's out there and he's crying at the Barrens and he's like, I got to kill this clown, please help me. And then all his friends come and they just grab him and they all have that big group embrace. And you have that love that children have at that age. And we got to remember his little brother, Georgie, also, you know, within the first 20 minutes of this movie, you're getting repeatedly punched in the face with child death. We're talking about Benny Loves You, and Benny Loves You starts off with a little girl dying and getting her eyes cut out, you know, and it is the same way. You start off with two different kids that are getting killed, and you know, Georgie the clown gets him when he's down in the sewer and bites his arm off. Like, you don't see it, but it's done off screen, and it's such a dark thing that is happening to children.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's a real like provocation to start a movie with the single most distressing thing in life, which is the pain or harm of a child. That's a real, like, from an orator's, you know, view, that's a real, like, come on, if you think you
Yeah.
can think you can handle this, because I'm going to, you know, from the very start, I'm gonna be
We gotcha.
challenging, public. Yeah. And so if you can sit through it, then come and join, like, come along for the ride. Yeah, they go, and I guess that's the other thing, you know, clowns are so associated with children and innocence and joy and fun. And so it's just taking all of these elements of our life and like twisting them and like dialing it up and just sending us into this like crazy horror world that sort of tickles our darkest nightmares.
And you know, we talked about how you would only watch, and what we didn't talk about this on camera, we talked off, but you've only seen it once because it affected you that bad. Now, I know you're not much into horror movies, but my little buddy Ghostface here, he does have a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Claire? What is, I know that you don't watch very many, but what would you say your favorite horror movie is?
Oh, okay. Does Requiem for a Dream count as a horror movie?
Oh God, yeah.
Can that be, the problem is,
Requiem for a Dream is a real life horror movie. That's real life horror. To me,
right,
horror is so subjective. Like, I
that's
consider
it,
Ghostbusters
like,
a horror
what
movie.
counts and what doesn't.
Right.
Sorry to.
No, you're fine. But I agree with you. Like, it's what is horror to me may not be horror to you. You know, like, I think Ghostbusters is a horror movie. I think Jurassic Park is a horror movie. Some of the movies that have scared me the most in my entire life, like The Day After Tomorrow, that End of the World movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And people call it an action movie. Right. That's a total horror film to me.
Yeah. That's it. I guess the definition of horror is really interesting, isn't it? To talk about my favorite horror movie is sort of a weird, like, everything inside my body is like, huh. But Requiem for a Dream, again, that has stayed with me. But that I saw again when I was quite young, maybe when I was like 16, by accident, because I had, this is a running theme, I had a real crush on Jared Leto. My friend was like, oh, I've got a treat for you. I've got this Jared Leto movie, and I was like, woo, and watched it, and have never been the same since.
Yeah.
And that again, that movie, I could never watch that again. I couldn't. I literally couldn't. But I think most of that movie is like burned into my retina. I watched that years and years and years ago, and I still now have like whole scenes of that in my head that play. It's really the color grading of it, the sound, the score of that movie. Oh, the performances. I found it. And everyone I know, I've never spoken to anyone who's seen Requiem for a Dream and been like, yeah, quite good, or
Yeah.
or like, whatever. People, that movie has just was created and somehow like absolutely seeps into everybody's
Oh,
blood.
and but what it's like I was just saying, it's real. Like this,
Yeah,
addiction is something that everybody has either faced or had somebody that's gone through it. And we've watched it happen, and we see these demons that are real. And then we watch. But to me, it's like there are certain movies you can only watch once. I'm with you. I'm dead serious. I've watched Requiem for a Dream once. Sophie's Choice, watched it once. We'll never watch that movie again. That movie devastated me. There are certain movies that you can watch once to say, "Hey, I've seen this. I don't got to see it again." Yeah, it got me good the first time.
And do you like when a movie like that devastates you? Like, I'm always so interested by how that's processed in different people's bodies, because do you come away feeling obviously not good, but is that a fulfilling experience for
See,
for
I think it depends because, like you said, it all is person to person. For me,
yeah,
I've watched people and I've been on that table sweating, hoping that something will be, just stop. And it's almost like a PTSD experience to a point because you're watching these things that you've been through, and it's hurting. Like I can feel the sweat on my body. I can feel the pain in my legs. Like I want to walk, but I can't because it hurts so bad. And, um, stuff like that is just so hard. And when a movie can do that to you, yeah, it's a great movie that's done its job, but I don't want to relive that again. I've
yeah,
lived it once, and it was painful, and it was sad, and it was devastating. And why would I want to go back to watching someone else live a pain that I've lived, or I've watched a loved one live, that I've held their hand while they were going through this terrible thing? And it's like one thing with me, Claire, that you would learn the more that we talk, something that I can't stomach, I can't do in any film, anytime is sexual assault. It's something that to me is just, it should never be used in any type of entertainment. There's nothing to me that's entertaining about it. There's nothing to me. I get rape revenge stories are a really good, vessel for some people. They like to see people get revenge on people that hurt them like that. And I get it. But for me, I can't do it. I've held people's hands while they've discussed it. I've held people while they've, had to go through it, not physically go through it at the time, but when they came out to me about what had happened.
yeah,
But it's just like, that's something that you're talking about, Requiem for a Dream and stuff like that. And it's one of those things that I can't be a part of sexual assault either. It's just, it hurts me. It physically makes me sick to watch it.
yeah. But it's so interesting, isn't it? Like, it is physical. The response that different people have to different movies, but particularly horror, it's physical. It's like a visceral experience, which is why people love it so much, because that's an extraordinary capacity that human beings have to literally physically respond to something that they're watching. But it's I know exactly what you mean. There are some things that, and whether it's got to do with your own life or what sort of triggers you or whatever. But yeah, I'm with you. Sexual assault. It's there are boundaries.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's something, and I have a lot of friends that'll tell me like, "Hey, I'll talk about a movie," and they'll be like, "Nope, don't do it. Don't even watch it." Because they know how I feel about it. So,
Really,
and I do appreciate you taking this time out to come and hang out with me, Claire. It's a little bit
Oh, that's
later for
fun.
you
It's
over
such a
across the
pleasure.
pond. Now we always end these podcasts with the same question. And now I think I know the answer, but I gotta ask because of how much it scared you off the genre. But we're gonna go back to my buddy Pennywise and It. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna rank this on a skull count. Now, what we're doing, we're not being critics. We're not judging it on score, acting, editing, nothing like that. What we're doing now is strictly judging this movie on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being the worst and 5 being the best. What would your ranking of It be?
Well, hang on. When you say the best, do you mean like
It affected you the
a
most.
lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5. A solid 5. If there was a 6, I'd go 6.
But when we were discussing this at the beginning, I was like, oh, well, I already know what's going to happen here at the end. Which I think is it's crazy because for some people, like we were just talking about Requiem for a Dream, and for some people like myself, I don't condone drug use. Anybody, it's something that it's an addiction. It's scary. It's not good. But to me, horror movies is like doing drugs. And the first time I did it, I got that high, and then I was constantly chasing that dragon, trying to get that again, trying to feel that, that adrenaline inside my body, and all those endorphins going nuts when I'm scared. Like that's what drugs for me is horror movies and baseball. Those are the 2 drugs that I have that fill me with endorphins and fill me with that high of being so the euphoria. So it's funny how Requiem for a Dream got brought up.
I think everyone has their thing. Like I performing on stage. There is nothing. There is nothing in the whole universe that like does me like that, and can get my adrenaline levels to that. There's nothing that makes me feel like that. And then people who do extreme sports, they say the same thing. People who love fairgrounds and huge big rides. It's an amazing feeling, that feeling of adrenaline. So I totally get horror, the way that horror can do that to people. Yeah, 100%. It's addictive.
Oh, well, I got a buddy that his first horror movie was Nightmare on Elm Street. And there's the scene in the movie where the sheet comes and it puts its, wraps around Rod and it hangs him. And my buddy wouldn't sleep with sheets on his bed for like years after that because it scared him so bad. So horror is not always one of these things where we watch it, we're like, that's so cool, I want to do that. Some people like yourself, you watch it, you're like, yeah, I'm good. I don't got to do that again. And I think it's amazing that we as human beings can watch the exact same thing and have such different emotions and effects on us. It's the beautiful part of being connected and being human. So I didn't say this at the top, but I'm going to say it now, everybody. All of Claire's social media links are down here in the description. So make sure you're following her, not just for what she's doing on social media, but so you can follow the career that she has ahead of her. She's about to have a new baby, so I'm hoping we get a bunch of little baby pics that I can look at. Oh.
I will try. I will try not to overload, but just introduce.
Overload. We love babies. So, Claire has a lot on her plate coming up in the future. So make sure you're giving her a follow on social media so you can stay up to date on everything that she's doing. Claire, don't go anywhere, please. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.